Good evening, Daytona Beach, and welcome to the May 5th, that's Cinco de Mayo, 2021 business meeting of the Daytona Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, our CRA. We are delighted to have each of you with us this evening. Ms. LaMagna will review the procedures for tonight's meeting.
Good evening. Agendas are available on the table in the lobby and in the front of the City Commission chambers. All the exhibits pertaining to items on the agenda are posted in the lobby. Please feel free to view the exhibits at any time during tonight's meeting. You are required to fill out a blue form to speak before the Community Redevelopment Agency. Forms are available on the table in the lobby and at the front of the Commission chambers. You must complete the sections that ask for your name, address, topic of concern, agenda item number, signature, and date. The form must be completed and placed in the designated box. Resolutions under administrative item number 6 are open for public comments, and you may fill out a blue form to speak when that item is called. All citizens completing a blue form will be allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. When you approach a lectern, please speak clearly into the microphone and give your full name and address. The 2.5-minute clock on the monitor above, the 2.5-minute clock on the monitor above you will begin will start running when you begin to speak. Please pay close attention to your time. You will be told when your time has expired. Disorderly conduct in the public meeting of the City Commission. Article 2, Section 6238 of the City Code of Ordinances reads as follows. It shall be unlawful for any person to behave in a riotous or disorderly manner in any public meeting of the City Commission or any committee, agency, or board thereof, or to cause any unnecessary disturbances therein by force, shouting, or any other action that is calculated to disrupt such meeting, or to refuse to obey any ruling of the presiding officer or such meeting relative to the orderly process thereof. Please be courteous and respectful of the views of others. Personal attacks on the Community Redevelopment Agency, city staff, or members of the public are not allowed. Please silence cell phones and other wireless devices during the meeting. All conversation must take place either at the lectern or on the dais so that everyone can hear the business being discussed tonight.
Ms. LaMagna, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Henry?
Present.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Traeger?
Here.
Commissioner Delgado? Commissioner May?
Here.
Commissioner Cantu?
Here.
Mayor Derek L. Henry?
Here. This time we will have our invocation led by Commissioner Traeger, followed by the pledge by Commissioner Henry.
Heavenly Father, bless us as we try to do the work of the city. Bless our residents and all the people that are the first responders who we rely on so much, whether they're grocery store workers or the police or the fire. Take care of them. Keep them safe. Our troops overseas, look after them and bring them home as quickly as possible and healthy. We ask your blessing upon the work that we are trying to do the best for our city. We thank you for making a little bit headway in this predicament of the pandemic with the vaccines, and we pray that this will be all over soon, not only here in the United States, but also all over the world. We thank you for everything you do for us, and we praise and bless your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we want to do a motion for Commissioner Delgado? Not yet.
Yes. Oh, he will be here. Did he say he wasn't? There was any?
I haven't.
Okay, we'll just wait. No need.
Okay.
Okay.
Then we're going to move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the April 7th, 2021 business meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Reed and a second from Commissioner Traeger. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
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 Those in opposition, same sign. This motion carries 7-0. We'll now have our agenda approval. If there are any changes, our city manager will address them at this time.
We have no changes, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Take a motion from Commissioner Reed and a second from Commissioner Traeger. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
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 Those who are in opposition, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number 6, which is our administrative items. Item number 6A is the City Manager's Office Riverfront Esplanade Development Maintenance and Lease Agreement, Second Amendment Resolution. A resolution approving the Second Amendment to the Riverfront Esplanade Development Maintenance and Lease Agreement between the city, the city's Community Redevelopment Agency, and Brown & Brown Riverfront Esplanade Foundation, Inc., to clarify the parties' rights and responsibilities for maintenance and operation of the leased premises and the city's Sweetheart Trail, adopting a revised Riverfront Esplanade Master Plan, authorizing the chair and the city clerk to execute the amendment to the agreement, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion from Commissioner Reed and a second from Commissioner Traeger. And do we have any speakers?
I do have speakers, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker is Sandy Murphy, and on deck is Jim Cameron.
Good evening, Sandy Murphy, 136 Park Avenue. There are a couple things that I noticed in the changed agreement that I'm curious about. The one is that the first amendment to this agreement specifically excluded, one of its major purposes was to specifically exclude the Sweetheart Trail from the purview of the foundation. Now we're making a change that puts the Sweetheart Trail specifically under the purview of the foundation. And I think I would like to hear an explanation of what the seesawing, what is the purpose of this back and forth as to whether that will be included or not. A second thing that I have a comment on is that there are a number of non-motorized transportation items like scooters, skateboards, inline skates, roller skates, that would now be banned from the premises. And I've used trails in the past. You often see small children with their skates or their skateboards walking along with mom and dad. And, if the purpose of this change is to keep rowdy kids who are unsupervised from tearing through the park, then I would prefer to see it phrased that way and deal with unsupervised youth rather than taking away the opportunity for young kids to be skating and so forth on what's a perfect surface for that activity. So those are the concerns that I have about it. The third item is not requiring any event permits from the city for activities on the Esplanade. And what concerns me about that is I can understand the practicality of not having to come in for every single thing when we hope that this will be an active event space. But for the term of the contract, that seems like a lot of control for the city to give up as to what's happening there. And so I'd just like to understand a little better what the thinking is in removing the requirement for the event permits. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Jim Cameron.
Good evening. I'm Jim Cameron. Jim Cameron Consulting. Daytona Beach. Had to catch myself. But
Sure you did.
no, wanted to go on record in support of this, though, because when I was with Chamber, we very much supported this same project, though. And I want to speak on it in support still as an individual, though, because it is going to make the downtown area that much better. And I think trying to get people to move here and live downtown, it's going to add that much more of an amenity for people living downtown. So we're I'd say maybe the 20-yard line or something like that as the game goes, the field goes. So again, wanted to support this in favor of tonight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That was my final speaker on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like for the attorney to address Sandy's concerns.
He can, and I was going to address him from my perspective at the end, but I'm not the attorney. So he's your attorney, so you definitely want to hear from him. But I will let him go first, and then I'll say what I think we perhaps should do. And I've thought about this, and I heard from Sandy, and then I've considered what they thought. But go ahead and address your commissioner.
Yes, Mayor, I'd be glad to. So just by way of background, to address Ms. Murphy's comments, sorry. So the original lease, which was adopted back in 2019, was a bit ambiguous as to whether or not the trail would be involved as part of the premises or whether that remained city-controlled property. So the First Amendment was done to realize that ambiguity. And in the First Amendment, it was expressly stated that the trail would be outside of the premises, even though it runs through the premises. And so it would be maintained as a public forum under city control. As time has gone on now and the property is being improved at great expense to the foundation, they came back to the city and asked for some further clarification as to what the maintenance responsibilities would be. And I believe their concern was that they wanted to ensure that the trail was maintained to the same quality and standard as the rest of the premises. And so the Second Amendment goes further to say that although the trail will remain under city ownership and control and not part of the premises, the foundation will have the obligation to maintain the trail. So I hope that clarifies Ms. Murphy's concerns. With regard to the rules, a second function of the Second Amendment was to identify and clarify what the rules would be for the Sweetheart Trail. And in regard to that, the foundation has worked with city staff and myself in coming up with some proposed rules. Some of the rules, as indicated, did relate to prohibiting kite flying and skating and rollerblading, those sort of activities. Those are items we can discuss today and work with the foundation tonight to amend if you're not agreeable to those rules. But I would point out that those are the rules that the foundation has presented to you, which would presumably be consistent with their rules for the Esplanade property. So this agreement essentially identifies what is Esplanade property and what will remain under city control, such as the trail. And the master plan, which is being adopted tonight, has those identifying markers as part of a site plan.
All right. There are no other questions. I understood the sentiments that were expressed from Ms. Murphy, and I initially thought, well, kite flying and probably the one that but I understand it's a challenge down there. And skating, well, we have a skate facility. We have to remember there's certain things that are done in certain parks and certain spaces and not in other spaces. So I'm not going to begrudge any of that. My bigger issue was, and I really didn't think about this, is the whole trail itself. The trail is a part of the park. So it was, as I looked at it, why is it that we're not relinquishing the whole trail? It's not as if they've forsaken the trail. They've taken their own money and they've also repaired the trail. So I think we should say, we're already amending the rules. Why don't we find a way to enable them to manage the trail in the same way that they're managing the rest of the park? And I understand this point of public spaces. It seems to me as though they have enough other space that meets that standard. Now, and if you just can't find a way to do that, I would think we should be able to allow the manager and the attorney to allow this team of benefactors, who I think have gone beyond proving their capacity to manage a large sidewalk. If they're going to manage the whole park, why can't they manage the sidewalk that they've already built? And it keeps it all congruent. It should all be should be a part of the park. Not the parts that are not in the park, but the part that's in the park.
If I could address that briefly, Mayor.
Sure.
One of the issues here has to do with what are traditional parks and what would be private use of what we call esplanade areas. So trails and sidewalks are traditionally considered to be public forum areas where people can protest and exercise their First Amendments. So the reason the park was set, or the trail was separated from the park premises, which would be managed and operated and controlled by the foundation, was that the parties, both the foundation and the city, would need to maintain that alternative means for First Amendment expression, which can be conducted on the trail and on the sidewalks. And so we are trying to distinguish between those public areas, which would maintain all the rights and obligations that come with public parks, from the foundation areas for which they would have control with regard to permitting and operation.
So there's a difference in a trail or a sidewalk in another portion of a park as it relates to First Amendment.
Parks are traditional public forums for First Amendment purposes.
But,
And so we're distinguishing in this agreement the areas which will maintain that designation and those which will be owned and operated and controlled through the lease by the foundation. And that's the purpose of the master plan.
okay, but my point is, can't you make it a part of the park that's not inclusive of the sidewalk? Even if it were, you know, say where the statue were or some other portion of the park.
We certainly could if the foundation were to maintain that public forum status
Okay.
for the trail.
Well, here's what I would like you guys to do, if it's possible, and if it's something you want. If you don't want it, I don't want to try to do something that you don't want. But I think it's just better if that sidewalk is congruent. If it's agreeable to the commission, I think we should ask the manager, in conjunction with the staff and with their team, to try to come up with a way where the sidewalk is not that designated area.
The other issue we run into is permitting. So we typically wouldn't transfer permitting powers to a third party. So to the extent there'd be events occurring on the trail, the city would traditionally hold that authority. So
Well, we're not going to offer permits on the sidewalk,
I don't see.
would we? I don't,
if there were a parade or some other
No.
outdoor activity which would occur on the trail,
There's a basic disagreement between he and I on the interpretation of the use of the trail as it relates to the park. And I know of many trails that are in parks that are secured and operated by the entity that runs that park. And that doesn't, we're providing the public access and the ability of the public to have the right to speak in designated areas, which is similar to what we do in many parts of our parks today. So he and I are going to have to talk about it and try to reach some agreement, but my interpretation is different than his.
I'm not sure that we disagree on that, Jim. You're saying it should be open to the public. I'm saying the same thing. And whether that management is under foundation or under the city is insignificant from a legal standpoint.
okay. If you guys can work that out, and we're going to approve, we haven't voted on that yet, have we? I don't know what we'll see in a moment. But if you can work out that second part, and it works for you all, and it works for us, that's what I think I prefer. Do you all agree to that? Or do you not agree to that as a commission? I'm asking,
I'd like to ask a question
Yeah,
when you
go ahead.
finish. Are there going to be any permanent commercial establishments in the park? I know you talked about feeding and stuff, but there are not going to be any permanent commercial stores or anything in the. I got a concern from a constituent.
no.
Commissioner Traeger, my name is Joe Yarborough. I've recently been retained as the manager of the Esplanade. And to answer your question, no. There is no commercial activity unless it's permitted, but it wouldn't be a regular commercial activity. And we're working on that. The rules expressly prohibit anyone from going into the park and running something commercial without a permit.
Thank you.
Okay,
I will tell the person.
all right. Well, do y'all have any objection to my proposal, or if you have objection, we don't want to send staff down to work on that if it's not something you're agreeable to.
I don't right now.
Okay, not right now.
Well, point is,
Yeah.
what
they
the
bring
writing
back,
is
what they
finally.
bring back. Okay. Or do we not understand? I don't want to be the one giving a directive if we're not in agreement. Oh. The question is it okay for the staff, in conjunction with the Esplanade, to develop a way, a mechanism by which the trail could be underneath the auspices of the Esplanade as the rest of the park is? So as the trail is not pulled out as a separate entity.
And we're speaking of the part of the trail that's in the
That's
Esplanade.
not the trail that's outside of the Esplanade.
Okay.
That keeps it all congruent and a part of one larger project.
So if we want to go that way, we can certainly do that. We'll amend the Second Amendment or revise the Second Amendment to provide that the trail will be within the premises. And obviously, we'll need the foundation's approval tonight to that.
We don't have to amend that tonight, do we?
You want to bring it back, or do you want to?
I would rather to make sure that you guys get it to their agreement. Yeah, I don't want to, yeah, yes, sir.
Brown, and so let me take off my mask. I think we need to go ahead and do what you're suggesting. If we're going to make this a really, really wow park, and we're going to be able, this is our goal, to have something going on every weekend at least. We'll not be able to crank it up immediately, but as time goes along, we think it will bring lots of people downtown. We have to be in a position to control the park. I cannot imagine how I would feel, or my wife would feel, if there was a rape or a murder down in the park, because now one of the things that we've had to do just recently that we didn't know about is we've had to invest another $1.5 million at the request of the city in order to put a fence around the park, which is basically going to be hidden a little bit by a hedge, and then there will be entry places. So we can actually close the park at night and open it each morning. This is very, very important, particularly in view of what is happening in some parks that are municipal or state-owned around Florida. Now, there is another little problem that the city has sovereign immunity, does not. So we have to bend over backwards to be as careful as possible. And if there's a chink in the sidewalk or a little hole here, we can be held responsible, whereas the city may be held responsible, but it's not worth a while to go after it. So for us to be able to run this in the way that you would like for us to run it, and that it will benefit the citizens in the way that you would like it to benefit the citizens and the economy of the downtown area, bringing together, as I've talked to the mayor a little bit about, a lot of people from a large area within Halifax, let's say all over this area of the community. And so we have to be in a position. So I would like to go ahead and recommend, and is this acceptable, Joe? Because Joe is the one that's running this thing.
Yes, sir. I think it's already ready to amend it to go ahead and solve this problem.
Yeah.
now. That's great.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, it does need to be part of the responsibility list. Let me remind you that the other side of the right in front, beautiful, that was that's been renovated. Big street.
Well, I think the recommendation, let's ask Bob, will that recommendation satisfy him
The recommendation.
that you've just made, the amendment that you're recommending?
So it'll be a simple change. We'll just include the trail then
Okay.
within the premises where we had excluded it in the First Amendment.
Okay. So how would that work?
What the trail does now.
And I'll let you
Yes,
go ahead
sir.
and use the mic.
Please,
Thank
if I
you.
may. The Esplanade has the authority with its rules to do things the city can't do. And one of those is panhandling. One of them's begging. It's not against the city's rules to panhandle. I think or the foundation thinks that would not be something we wanted in Esplanade. We wanted families to feel totally safe. We want them back in that place every day, using it. If the trail is under the responsibility of Esplanade, so I might remind you, they built it. They might have rebuilt it, but it's a heck of a lot better than it ever was, from one end to the other. This resolution allows us to close it at sunset and open it at sunrise. Okay? That's good. What it doesn't do is let us adopt the rules and regulations we have for the rest of the Esplanade. It's still under city rules and regulations. And it's very difficult, as you well know, to reach the goals that you have with these little trepidations. Now, I'm walking down the sidewalk, I get off. You're in Esplanade. It's not a fence on the side. So it's just kind of difficult. As soon as you step off, there's a few different rules. You get back on here and you can play a guitar in your underwear. You get off of it, you can't do that. These are some of the hang-ups that we'd like to be able to avoid if we can. And by giving us the authority, the Esplanade, the authority to control that, it's consistent throughout the Esplanade.
Okay, so my question then, Joe, is it necessary to adopt the amendment as proposed?
I think that's a question. If Bob, you're prepared to let this body amend the Second Amendment to accommodate what we're talking about and what I think the mayor's referring to tonight, that's great. If it's got to go back at a later date, we'd at least like to get this adopted.
Well,
The second.
Mayor, it's at your discretion, with the approval of the foundation. If you give me clear direction as to how you want the Second Amendment revised, I can do that without bringing it back to the commission for another vote. If you'd like to see it again after it's been revised prior to vote, we can bring it back. It's really up to the commission's discretion.
I'm not for added bureaucracy. We have enough. So if it can be done now, let's get it over with.
Let's do it now. We have been spending a lot of time talking about this, and all of this is good to talk about up front, but I think he's got the solution, and you then would look at it, and if it's passed tonight, everything is scope setting with the amendment.
We'll simply move the trail into the premises, put it under the operation, management, and control of the foundation. And we'll have the motion so reflect, Mayor, if we may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who made the motion?
It was Commissioner Reed, and the second was Traeger.
Mayor,
Yes.
right here.
Stacy.
I'm sorry.
I also received the emails from Sandy and Ann, and I mean, I can understand some of this, like fireworks, motorized vehicles, rollerblades, even though I used to rollerblade. I just want to make sure because it says motorized scooters. ADA motorized scooters, I'm sure is going to be allowed. Allowed, okay. Another thing, I have 13 grandkids. Kites. I don't see what the problem is with kites. It's a cheap thing for a family. You go to a dollar store, buy kites for $1. I've done it. I mean, what is wrong with a kite in a park?
It's the trees and all.
And another thing is your model boats. I've done that with all my grandkids, and I mean, it's a family thing.
Excuse me, there's a series of ponds, 3 ponds. One is huge with a bridge over it. What we didn't want was sitting motorized boats and that kind of traffic sitting on the beach, running those or on the walkway, and we have pedestrians going through. It's something that we're muddling through, Commissioner. It's nothing we're going to be hard on, except that we thought when the foundation went over the rules, let's start off and when we use some common sense, Mr. Manager.
Wow.
And then when you run into it and it gets out of hand, they're in place. For example, the closings at sunset. It's going to take us 30 minutes to get everyone out and then secure the gates, for
But common
example.
sense,
We're
kite.
going to use some common sense. If kids out flying a kite, we don't really care. If it's organized, we want you to come in and get a permit. We envision having kite events.
Okay.
We want those.
Are you
so
saying a
it-
permit for kites?
We have no problem with it.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, that's been a big family thing in my
Well,
family.
sure it has, and haven't we all had it?
And with 13 grandkids, you take 13, you have to take 2 vehicles, and it's a cheap event.
Well, and then we haven't gotten to the point we have designated open areas, but they're not as open as I would like to see landing at the pipeline every day. We got to muddle through that a little bit, and I don't mean to be mugwumpish
that's
on
what
it,
we're
but there
here.
isn't a lot of room with the
But we are
giant
here to
oak.
meddle through that right now. And that's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, sure, and it's a legitimate question, and I understand. It looks
Right.
like, what are you doing? You can't let a kid fly.
Right.
We got to figure out where they can fly.
Okay.
The oaks in there have really cut down on the open space. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not just an open pasture like it used to.
Right, but if it's going to be family
If it can be,
and that's what you're saying, then kites should not be a big deal.
it isn't.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I don't even remember it being in our rules until I looked at the agenda. I'll take it back up with the foundation. Would that be all right?
Excuse me?
I'll take it back up with the foundation. I believe we can accommodate that.
Okay.
I agree. I think quite a few of the things that are on here are things that I envision would happen in a family park of this magnitude. Kite flying, the little boats. And so I would like to see some clarity as far as if any of those things will be allowed.
Yeah. Anybody in here ever run a park?
Excuse me?
Anybody in here ever run a
No,
park?
but I've been
I
to
go
lot
to a
of them.
park. I have 6
A lot of
kids.
them.
I haven't either, but I've been to a lot of them.
And they allow.
And so this is a new venture for Cece and me. And we're not going to do anything that will preclude people from enjoying the park as long as it does not create a potential problem for others. I don't see a problem with kite flying, but I do see a problem if the kites are allowed to fly next to a large grouping of oak trees and they get caught and then some little boy or girl climbs up and falls off and breaks their neck. See, that's the kind of thing that we have to be careful about. So if we designate a place, then it works. And until we find out how all this works, we're sort of saying to you, we're going to run this in order to be as beckoning and welcoming as possible. But we're also very, very concerned about the safety and welfare of the people using the park. I think that answers your question.
And I mean, I understand you all's, and I read that email, but I also understood the fact that you're getting off the ground, and you remember, we haven't seen those trees. Many of them 30 feet. They're not baby oak trees. They're not baby trees. So the park, you gotta, I guess what I'm saying is, and I guess what Howard was saying is, we got to give them a chance to figure out what to do and how it can work. They already had the authority to preclude those things. They were just asking that they be precluded on the sidewalk too. But that's why I'm asking that we go ahead and just let them have the sidewalk so that they'll have the whole shebang.
I'm okay with
And we don't have to, because I trust what they're doing, and I think we need to sort of let them go ahead and do what they're going to do and create what I believe is going to be, as I told someone the other day, and I don't think any of us have to sell this, but I've been up here for 8 years, well, 10 years, and been elected 10 years. I don't think anything that we've done in Daytona Beach is going to be have more of the opportunity to draw us together as a community. And I was telling Joe earlier, I personally have big plans for this park, not just for my family, but for our city. And I think, the whole point of having a splash pad it's gonna be a place where our kids are gonna have a good time. And so let's give them an opportunity to show us and to figure it out. And so if you all are in agreement, we have a motion. You've seconded the motion, you've made the motion, made a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries 7-0.
And to be clear, Mayor, just for the record, your motion included the direction to staff and to the legal department to revise the Second Amendment, which is in your backup, to include the Sweetheart Trail within the premises under the control of the foundation.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes our, unless anyone has any comments, is the CRA? Not. That concludes our CRA meeting. We'll start our regularly scheduled commission meeting in just a moment.